Awesome. Well, I hope that's helpful between these little cards that you've received on the way in and that little video. Hopefully, you're already beginning to place yourself. What we're going to be learning about today is a little different than normal. I mean, normally at church we'd be, opening up the scriptures and talking about these types of things. But what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be learning about the 4 classic temperaments, but really specifically through the lens of how we love, lead, and listen to one another, because I'm telling you, as we do life with the people around us, as we seek to love one another as Christ's command, we really do have to understand one another. Let me ask you a question. How many of you, at some point, tried to communicate something to somebody, family member, friend, person at work, and you thought you clearly articulated and communicated your thoughts, only to find out that what they heard was something completely different? Anybody ever experienced that? Okay, I'm seeing almost every hand. That never happens at church. What that means is this really does apply to all of us, because what we're talking about today is communication, and communication is a two-way street, all right? And we all know this. There's 2 parts of communication. There is what is said. I think it's going to come up here. What is said and what is heard, right? There's the communication, what's going out, and what's being received. And when there's a gap between these 2 things, when what is being said and communicated is not received on the other end, we call that miscommunication. All right, so the communication has been missed. And what we want to do today is we want to share with you a tool that will help you to communicate better. And I think that's extremely valuable in every area of our life, including within the church community. Our ability to communicate our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs to others in a way that they can understand is paramount to having healthy relationships all around us. I think I said this in the first service. I really believe that Satan, the enemy, right, of the church and the enemy of all things good, would love to have more miscommunication. It would love to have us saying things that other people hear the wrong way, offense, division, all of that comes through miscommunication. And I wanted to share a quick story when, again, I was at a wedding yesterday and I got to stand there as the minister. The minister always gets the best seat in the house, and I'm standing a foot and a half away from the bride and groom as they profess their love for one another, and there's tears and laughs and giggles and just all of it's happening in front of me. And I'm thinking in that moment, I'm reflecting back to my own wedding day. 23 years ago, I married Jessica, who will be up here later to share with you. You'll probably know who she is. And I was remembering in the first few weeks of our marriage, we were still in our honeymoon, so we kind of got settled into our house. And one night we were sitting there, it was a fall evening, and she said, "Hey, let's have some hot chocolate," but we didn't have any. So we thought, well, let's drive into town. And so we literally got in the car and we drove 25 minutes because we lived out of town. We drove all the way into the city of Peterborough, walked into a grocery store, and we're holding hands. It's like, oh, it's our first time in the grocery store together. It was exciting. And we find the hot chocolate aisle and we go down and okay, as I already said, I'm red, so I'm driven, I'm forceful. I'm like, that's the one, let's go, in, out, like I got it all planned out. And I'm just there to make a decision, but I thought, I'm gonna let my wife choose. So I'm holding back my redness. And I said to her, like, which hot chocolate would you like to buy? And of course, I'd already done all the calculations, price per gram. Okay, so I already know what's the best value on the shelf. You have to weigh the value against the quality, because that's important, right? If 2 products are the same price, but one's better quality, well, okay, you have to factor. So I'm doing all the math in my head. I'm ready to make my selection. I said, Jess, you choose. And she looked at them. She's like, I don't like any of these. And she just walked out of the aisle. And I'm standing there. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was holding a can of no-name hot chocolate. And I was thinking about throwing it over the aisle because I was so mad. And it wasn't just about the hot chocolate. It was in that moment, something dawned on me. See, I knew that we were different. Of course we were different, right? Because we were like compliment each other, and I knew we were different, and that's partly why I married her. But it was in that moment that I realized that we don't just have differences. We have a different frame for how we view the world, a different lens. And so for me, when I went to the grocery store, I wasn't leaving without hot chocolate. I was on a mission. I had a target in mind. And of course, my wife, she was enjoying the journey. All right, it didn't matter to her if we got it or not. Right? She'd rather go to Target. Actually, it's her favorite store. But it dawned on me in that moment that we had a different lens for the world, and it dawned on me in that moment that this was going to be harder than I thought. I know none of you have ever experienced something like that, but in that moment, I was like, whoa. And from that day to now, over the last 23 years of marriage, my wife Jessica and I have pressed into almost any tool that we could find to help us understand each other better, our children better, the people that we lead here at the church better. And over the years, we've studied DISC, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, love languages, the big five. Like there's all these different tools, and none of them are perfect, and none of them are Bible, they're tools. And we've learned over the years these tools that help us. And so when we're interacting with people in the church, when we're interacting with people at work, when we're interacting with our children, we have an understanding and a filter to understand how the other person is viewing our communication and viewing our actions. And so today I want to introduce you to, this is a really basic curriculum called I Said This, You Heard That. And in a few minutes, we're going to actually hear a video interview of the author, Kathleen Edelman. And what she does is she takes the 4 classic temperaments. These are thousands of years old. And she takes them and tries to make them simple, color-coded, so that they can become simple, common language to help us understand one another better. The text that all of her curriculum is based on is found in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 29. And these are the words of Paul. And it says this, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths." Now, I had this verse was crammed down my throat as a kid because I grew up in a Christian home and my parents did not allow cursing or swearing or dirty jokes. And if any of that happened, we would get read this verse, and then my mom would wash out my mouth with soap. All right. I know we don't do that anymore. It's probably child abuse now, but then it was a lesson. And zest was the worst. Zest. Oh, like none of this ivory or Irish. Zest was awful. And she used to wash my mouth out with soap. Be like, we don't say those 4-letter words. We don't talk like that around here. That's unwholesome talk. And of course that applies, but really what Paul is talking about here is not 4-letter words. What he's actually talking about is the words that come out of our mouth that harm, that destroy, that discourage, that cause division. And he goes on to say this as we continue. He says, but only words that are helpful for building others up. Isn't that a beautiful image? That we would speak words that build up and encourage other people according to, let's all say this together, their needs. That's so important. So it's easy for me to say, well, I said it. I said it because I know it's true, and I said it the way I would. But Paul actually says, no, we need to speak in a way that builds others up according to their needs. One of the things I realized as we have been walking through this process of raising our own children is that the way I need to be spoken to and the way my kids need to be spoken to are different because they have a different temperament. And so me being a red, I like forceful things. So like Jess and I were talking this week. Sometimes she'll send me a text message. I'm about to leave from work and she'll say, hey, would you mind picking up this or that? Could you? And it's like all like open and sweet. And I'm just like, do I mind? And I'll literally say to her, like, you just gave me a decision and a task. Like, just tell me what you want. And so she's learning to communicate in red language. It's like, pick this up on your way home. Check. Okay. And so the way but see, again, if you talk to somebody who's not forceful and you're like, do this, they're like, are you mad at me? Right? Like we understand. So the temperaments matter. With my children, sometimes I'll speak a harsh word of like, do it or else. And they just shut down. Why? Because they're different temperament. If I have one child who's a red, and if I say, do it or else, he goes, or else what? And we engage. We engage, and usually something good comes out of it. So it's amazing when we begin to understand the different temperaments, but it is all for this purpose of being able to love and listen. I got one last thing to share with you, and then we'll pass it over to Kathleen. If we do not understand others, if we don't make it a point to do whatever we can to learn about the needs, desires of other people, and how they need to be communicated, we will not be able to love them well, lead them well, or listen well. And so I wanted to set the stage for why what you're about to hear is so important. My hope is that this will become a really simple language and tool that we could use to love one another better. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kathleen, and we'll hear from her.
I wanted to start with this question
Yes.
right here. Why do the same words land differently for different people?
Okay, so words are very powerful, but the real one answer to that is temperaments.
Temperaments.
Temperaments is why, because you hear and you speak out of your own temperament.
So take the illustration I started with.
Yes.
When my wife says, I want to go low-key for my birthday.
Yes, which I felt her pain when you did the...
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
You and my wife have
Yes.
similar temperaments.
Yes, we do.
And so she doesn't want a surprise party.
No, she did not. Or she wanted a surprise party she knew about. Yeah, there you go.
Tell me about it beforehand.
Yeah.
Learning what I've learned from you has been so helpful in so many areas of my life, but particularly in marriage.
Right.
That is it's just unfortunately an easy and difficult place to apply.
It is. Because when you're talking about temperaments, you're talking about you spoke and your wife heard. And then she spoke and you heard.
And I was speaking in a language of my own temperament.
And you're speaking your language and she's speaking hers. And there's all this gray area.
I was even hearing her words through my own temperament.
Through your own lens. Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
So we want to know the temperament so that we can, again, love others better.
And this is all rooted in Ephesians 4:29, which
Everything
again,
I do is Ephesians
I've learned
4:29.
from you.
Yep. So it's communication, temperaments, all down the guidance of Ephesians 4:29.
That we are communicating in such a way that is according to their need.
To build others up according to their needs and then benefit all who listen.
I love that.
Right?
So as we're diving into temperaments, what the first thing I want to talk about is something that I have also learned from you, that it is different than personality.
Yes. And this is where a lot of people get caught up. There is absolutely a difference between temperament and personality. Personality is a snapshot of behavior or feelings or emotions in a certain time. So it's the what. And then temperament is the why behind the what. It's the why behind the feelings or the why behind the emotion or the why behind the behavior. So it's two completely different things.
That is very helpful to me. And what you're going to cite, one of the simple, easy ways to explain this is through this quadrant right here, through these terms, which a lot of you have probably heard these terms.
They have, and maybe, the history of it is that these been around for thousands of years. This isn't something new. Hippocrates studied how people naturally responded in different situations, and they continuously fell into 4 different categories. Well, at that time, they thought it was humor of the body or body fluid, right?
That it was actually in
your body, hence the names. These are all body fluid, right? But this is a mouthful. These can be a mouthful. So we've matched them with colors, and that's where we've gone, especially with children. If you've ever heard a child try to say a Greek name,
like
it can
phlegmatic.
Get phlegmatic. It gets a
tough
little,
for a
Mom, I'm
4-year-old
phlegm,
Right,
exactly, right. So we matched them up to the colors.
And it's so, to me, it's one of the genius that behind what your work is that you've made it so simple for people. Because instead of having to learn those difficult terms, you can just understand these colors. And these colors match up so well with these temperament types.
Absolutely perfect. The sanguine yellow, the choleric red, the melancholic blue, and the phlegmatic green. And what we have to understand is, people come in and they want to change their wife or they want to change their husband or fix their child, and they think it's very complex, and really it can be very simplistic if we can just learn this foundationally.
I love that. So one of our hopes over the next few minutes is that not only would you begin to identify your own self and learn more about yourself, but also that you'd begin to learn more about those around you. So I would imagine that will be helpful for all of us to do. I know it certainly has been helpful for me. So do you want to explain these a little bit?
Well, these are quadrants are put in effect. So the top 2, the red and the yellow, are extroverts. And in communication, that means your thoughts and emotions go outward. These are people who have no filter. So they just information out, right? So they talk before they think.
Why did people laugh at that?
Because they know that they go, and then they're going, ooh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or they just needed to know, so they can they're starting to already identify with how they speak, right?
And let me guess, these bottom 2 are introverted.
Yes, which this
Quick
is
learner.
me, and this is you.
Exactly.
So we're polar opposites, right?
Right.
So that's why you're an arm distance away. So here you go. This is a processor. These people are introverts, which again means their thoughts and emotions go inward, right? This is a person that thinks before they talk, right?
And doesn't like being interrupted.
Exactly.
One of the thing I love about your definition of extrovert introvert, I think a lot of times we think extroverts, those are people that like to be around other people, and introverts are people that don't, which is not necessarily true. The way you say it, which I think is great, is your ideas are in a way I think about it, that your ideas are formed out here. As an extrovert, I sit in meetings and I'll say loads of stuff that I don't know I even believe, because I'm just forming the ideas.
right?
Whereas an
That's the
introvert,
no filter,
that's right. The introvert is they're not going to speak until the idea is fully baked.
Exactly.
And then they'll bring it out for others to see.
Meanwhile, I'm just looking at you like,
yeah, what an idiot.
taking a note, taking a note, right? So that leads us to the next part, though.
Yeah.
The red and the blue are task-oriented people. These people will prefer a task over people, where the yellow and the green prefer people over tasks. So this is why it's really important that we understand the extrovert, introvert, people task, because the phlegmatic is an introvert that likes to be around people. They would prefer to be around people.
An introvert that prefers to be around people.
That prefers to be around people.
Yeah.
Just like the choleric.
Yeah.
An extrovert.
Yeah.
But is task-driven.
The red, they can be around people, but they prefer the task over the people.
In fact, sometimes the people become the task. Yeah, and that's what they have to watch out for.
Which we have all worked with. We've all worked with people like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They can get a lot done, but sometimes you feel like
You're a part of
the getting it done.
Exactly, exactly. So that's really important to know.
Yep. So what we're going to do is Kathleen's going to give what I think are 3 simple keys that can help you and I choose the words that we do decide to use. And I think by, obviously, we can't learn everything about this in the next few minutes,
Right.
but I think you've made it so simple that we can
so.
get a long way fast in the next few minutes just by understanding these 3 things. So give us the first one.
So the first one is your temperament determines the words that you speak. So in the guidance of Ephesians 4:29, we want to know what our words are. So the yellow speaks the language of. We each have each temperament has their own language. Fun and people. The red is power and control. The blue is perfection and order, and the green is calm and harmony. So these are the languages, the core motivators that are put out through and determine the words that you're going to use.
That makes so much sense to me.
And we've even, let me give you some examples. So for example, the yellow, they often speak with animated, fun.
I don't know why someone
people.
laughed at that. That was not meant to be funny. They were like, are you dunce? Like that's, but it makes so much sense to me because I am very yellow
Yes,
and I
know.
speak.
You're
And
a wiggler.
everything is
wiggly.
awesome.
You're wiggly all the time.
Yeah,
wiggly.
very.
He's wiggly. Wiggly. The camera guys are like going, where's Kathleen? Where's her part?
Daniel's back there. There he is. Thumbs up. Thanks, Daniel.
So you speak words
Animated,
that are
fun,
animated, fun,
Yeah.
people-oriented.
I say things like, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Who's going to be there?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, I totally forgot.
Yeah.
Those are things that I say so often.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's like a soundtrack to my life.
It is. And there you go. And then the reds, they often speak with bold, confident, controlling words.
Words like, I'll do it, or hurry up.
Yep.
Yeah, let's go now.
Yeah.
Kathleen, when I think about the words that the Reds use, do you remember the Saturday Night Live sketch that they used to do about the IT person that would show up at the person's desk when they had a problem, and you remember what they would say? Move. Yeah. Move.
Yeah. To the blue person that's going, what did I do wrong? You know?
That is very red. That's a very red thing to say.
That's exactly right. So, in the blue, they would speak, words that look like detailed, judgmental, or thoughtful words. Okay, this is a deep person.
Yep.
So they'll sound more like, you want to take a stab at it? No pressure.
Is everything going to be safe when you go
Good.
there?
There you go.
Are you sure you can trust these people?
Am I sure I can trust this guy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not sure.
Not so sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a mom who is very blue, and so that's what she always wanted to know. Is who's going to be there? Tell me more about it. I need more details before I can say yes to that.
Yeah. And now you understand.
Now I understand.
That she wasn't being a hovering mom, or this is how her language actually spoke.
Yeah, and it's a strength. That needs to. The more we can understand it, the more we can understand how to leverage it for others' benefit.
Exactly. And then the greens, they would often speak the language of easygoing, unenthusiastic, or patient words.
Things like no big deal.
No big deal.
Everything's fine.
Just chilling.
Just whatever.
Yeah.
It's cool.
It's okay with me.
I think about two people going to dinner and someone says, "Where do you want to eat?"
Wherever. Your choice.
I'm good with whatever. Yeah.
You're good.
Well, what are you into? I don't know. I mean, whatever
Until
you want.
you say, well, let's go to
Yeah,
Outback.
let's go to
Steak?
Outback. Outback? No, I don't want that.
We had steak yesterday.
Weird, because
Didn't
when
we
I
just
asked
do
you,
that?
you said whatever. And so
It's good. It's good.
the red is probably like, would you make up your mind?
Yes. The hair is like,
Care about your life.
Exactly. Make one decision.
Yeah, and the green is like, why are you yelling at me?
Yeah, exactly.
This is
and
so
the blue's in the
frustrating.
corner shivering, right? Yeah. I'm going to cook my HelloFresh now.
As a blue, you love HelloFresh?
Oh,
yeah,
of course.
I would imagine.
Yes, all the ingredients right out there.
Yeah. I like it if we could have a bunch of people over. All right, we'll stop. But this is why it's so important, because the more you can understand yourself, the more you can understand others.
Exactly.
The better you can apply Ephesians 4:29.
And love them better.
So the first one was, your temperament determines the words you use.
Right.
Number 2
is your temperament determines the words that you hear. And this is key.
And even the words you need to hear.
You need to hear them. This is the core motivator of the temperaments. Key.
How important is this?
This is it.
If
we never went to another slide, this was it. If you take anything home today, take this home. Because this is what separates temperament from personality, is these core motivating needs that you've been trying to fill since you, consciously or subconsciously, since you've been born.
Wow.
So every word and behavior is motivated through these core innate needs. So like the yellow, approval, acceptance, attention, and affection. Do you connect with those?
I connect with all of those.
Anyone in particular?
I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, is my boss going to like this day? Yeah.
Approve of you, right?
Is my boss going to approve? Sure.
Exactly.
And I try to tell myself, well, God approves, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter,
No.
Exactly. You still want the candy thumbs up, right?
Yeah.
The red, loyalty, sense of control, appreciation, and credit for work. So again, these are like food and water. So the choleric's looking like, hey, do they have my back? Are they gonna, really stand up for me, right? As an example. For the blue, it's safety, sensitivity, support, space, and silence. Kind of like when you asked me when we were practicing if you could hug.
Right.
And I was like,
I said, Kathleen, when you come on stage, because I was trying to think for I was like, okay, details, let's walk through it.
Yeah.
I said, would you be okay if I gave you a hug when you came in? She said a fist bump would be fine.
Yeah.
So
my definition of space, right? And that was nice.
Yeah.
And then the green is harmony, worthiness, lack of stress, and respect. So these are crucial. We want to define these needs. And that way, you want to define them so that you can love yourself better, so that these words that we're talking, you can say them to you first, and then you can learn the temperaments of the others. Now that I know you, I know these. So there's no reason when our paths cross now that I can't love you better by using words that fill these needs.
So can I throw a couple of questions out to you?
Sure.
Let's take, parenting is on the front of my mind.
Okay.
When I think about, we have a daughter who's red.
Okay.
And she definitely has a sense of control. I've recognized that need in her. So let's take, a common battle in our house would be who gets to decide what you're going to wear to school.
Right.
So how would play that out for how do I help a red in that case?
Let her plan out her outfit. And not only for the day, but the week. In fact, make it a challenge. Hey, I challenge you because you were so good at this. I challenge you to get an outfit for the whole week for school. And I believe in you because you are really good at that. In fact, maybe you can even show your younger brother how to do it.
Come on.
You're, mic drop, right?
Yeah.
Now you're trying to, right?
Kathleen just dropped the mic
Yeah,
in case you missed that. That was a mic drop.
Because there's a difference between control and sense of control. And that's what she wants. She just wants to have a sense of control and then to see that you have her back.
I love that. So let's take a green. Let's say, let's take a situation at work. Let's say somebody works with someone who's green.
Okay.
and the plans change. This is the way we were going to handle it, but now all of a sudden new data has come in and now we've got to change everything. How do you speak to agreeing about change?
First, you want to revisit where they were successful. And you want to say, hey, you were working on this. This was great. We were almost at a finish line. But I know that your skill set we have a little change. I would love to hear your opinion or your idea on how to get us through this change.
Okay.
Because these people have great ideas and opinions, but they're quiet by nature. So if they're asked, they definitely will have some way to get it finished.
You're giving the green a voice.
Exactly.
You're saying, hey, your voice matters.
It matters.
Speak up.
Yeah. And we really respect that.
Yep.
And your value on the team.
Yep.
You want to show them that their value. Like if they weren't there, they would be missed.
Wow.
So your voice is important.
That's tremendous.
Yeah.
So again, the idea is not just to understand yourself.
Right.
But to also understand the needs of the people close to you, the people that you work with in your family, so that you can build them up best.
That's right. It's just such an outline of the verse, is it not?
Yeah, it really is. That's what's amazing
really
about
is.
it. So the third big idea is this: understanding the temperaments changes every conversation. And why do you say the temperaments?
The temperaments, because again, you have to be so aware and accepting of your temperament. And know that when you speak, on your tongue lays the power of life or death.
Wow.
So your words that you give life to are a choice.
Yeah.
So you have to understand it changes every single conversation. So I always ask people to initiate a pause. Think and just breathe for a second before you say a word. Then you want to give grace to understand that person may be different than you, literally wired using words and behavior that are different than you, and then celebrate that, right?
Maybe more fidgety.
Yeah, way more fidgety. Way more fidgety. Almost like I had to take nauseated. Yeah, way more fidgety, right? Or talkative, or loud, or quiet, or whatever it is. But that is really accepting that person, right? But then it also helps you become the very best version of you. Right? Which is where we want to function from.
You just said three things.
Yes.
You said initiate the pause.
Initiate the pause. I'm big on the pause.
I love that.
Yep. Give grace.
Give grace.
And then celebrate.
I love
the difference.
Yeah.
Wow.
Giving grace means that you're going to allow them to be them.
Exactly.
But also, it doesn't mean that, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but it doesn't mean that just because they are red, that they can control every situation, though, right?
Exactly. It's that understanding that your strengths are my weaknesses, and my strengths are your weaknesses. So it really puts us in a place of humility. It puts us in a place of vulnerability and transparency, really, in communication. So we really have to learn to listen, which we don't do well in communication. Listen to understand instead of listening to respond. And then choosing those words that can celebrate not only you and your strengths, but the other person and theirs.
You brought a case study for us.
I did.
I love this. This is one of my favorite things I've seen you share. It's about your kids.
It is.
So hope this is not a surprise.
Surprise! Bryce is like, Avery's like, that's me. Okay, so this is Avery. She's my yellow. Bryce is also melancholy blue. And Bryce was studying abroad in Ireland at the University of Limerick. And he sent us a text. And the text said, tour was awesome. Also talked to somebody from the UK. The whole time it was really interesting. Just got on the bus back to Limerick safe and sound. Now this must have been quite a tour, because for a melancholy to put that in all caps, that had to be a great tour. But he's back to Limerick safe and sound. This is Avery's response to that text. Yay! Yay!
Can I stop?
Yeah.
She has already added more exclamation points
than
in the first line than he added the whole text.
Right. And then listen, I'm so thrilled to hear, because this is what she heard, and that's so cool that you got to talk to somebody from the UK. It doesn't say anything about the awesome tour. It talks about the person from the UK. And then it says, I'm glad you're back, safe, and had Fun. I don't see that word up here. Do you? Emoji, right? This is the temperaments, though. 1 minute later, we get this from Bryce. Oh no, somebody sat next to me on the bus. The whole trip is ruined.
That's so great. Not part of the trip. No, the whole thing
trip
is ruined.
Was ruined.
Because someone got in my space.
That's exactly right.
Love
right?
it.
And started putting emojis.
So in light of this, is there a temperament that's better than other temperaments?
Well, no, there isn't, really. All the temperaments are the same. There's no one that's better than the other, because really we are here to, celebrate each other's strengths. And again, your strengths are my weaknesses. So there is no temperament that is better than another. We want to just master our own and be our own best authentic self so that we can give. Because you cannot give what you don't have. So here's where we would want to put in self-talk. What are you saying to yourself? How are you building yourself up according to your needs so that when you cross the paths with somebody else, you can love them better?
And I've asked you this before, but this is off script a little bit. Okay. Sometimes people, which I know is not, you don't love that idea. I love it. I'm like, let's talk. Speaking of that, what do you think about the Super Bowl?
Let me buckle in.
Kathleen, sometimes people say, oh, I don't like that. I don't want you to label me.
Yes.
Don't put me in a box.
Okay.
It's a lot of times.
Mr. Red.
Right.
That's who it would probably come from, is the pushback from the label.
What do you say
This is a guide. I mean, this is really a guide in communication. There's no way that we can step back and look at our children or our friends or the people at work and say that you do not see the different temperaments.
Sure.
In fact, even you sitting here today, at some point of this, I'm sure you've connected at some point with one of the colors. So it's not necessarily putting somebody in a label as a descriptive word like, oh, you're funny, so you're yellow, or you're a good leader, so you're red. All the temperaments can be funny. All the temperaments can be a good leader. We just all want to function in our strengths because that's where your calling and purpose sits.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I want to revisit a couple things from this verse. So if we could put this verse back up again. There's a couple things that you pointed out that I thought would be a great landing place for us.
Okay. So this is my verse. If you happen to talk to my kids after, they grew up with this verse. This is our family verse. But the one word that I really is this word let. Okay, that tells us that our words are a choice. Just like we said earlier, on your tongue lays the power of life or death. So every word that comes out of your mouth
you
is
let
a
it
choice.
out.
You let it out or you keep it. You let it out or you keep it. So right there, we know all our communication is a series of choices.
Wow.
Right?
To put that in a simple way, every word that you use is a word that you choose.
That's right.
If you used the word, you chose the word, which I love. What I loved about that was that a lot of times we say, oh, well, that's just me, and sorry, you got to deal with it. But I had to get that off my chest. Or I had to say that.
Yeah.
And that's just not necessarily true.
No,
you chose those words. Now, your temperament might have pushed you toward that direction, maybe?
Exactly.
Would you say that?
Most likely in your weakness.
But that doesn't mean you didn't choose those words.
Right. Exactly.
Which leads to the next.
To the next one, which is unwholesome. Any, too. It doesn't just say some. God said any unwholesome talk, which again, unwholesome means detrimental physically, mentally, or to the moral well-being of somebody.
Wow.
I mean, if we just stop for a minute and think what he's asking us, I don't think anybody would want to do that to another person, let alone themselves, right?
It raises the stakes.
It raises the stakes. Are you speaking wholesome words to yourself? And then to others, right? Just stop right there for a minute. And again, initiate that pause, right?
So one of the things I've heard you say is this, that we're never to use your temperament as an excuse or as a weapon.
That's exactly right.
What do you mean by those two?
Exactly what you just said earlier. We never use our temperament as an excuse. Hey, that's just how I am. Just get used to it. I'm not a quick mover. Do it yourself. Right. We just don't do that. In any relationship, it's just not a helpful place to be. right?
I love that because, again, it goes back to the verse. It is our words are meant to be for the good of the other person.
That's right.
I mean, this is the heartbeat of what Jesus taught us, that we are to love our neighbor as ourself. That if I'm going to love my neighbor best,
Yes.
I've got to use the words, I've got to understand my neighbor.
Yes.
And I've got to use the words that my neighbor needs.
Yes. And he says that because he says, love your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. He's saying, see you how I see you. I
love
see
that.
you as a beautifully yellow, wiggly person. Once you accept that and love that, then love your neighbor.
I love that.